All right, guys, I'm going to be pulling up my screen here. The session that we're in right now is called, hang on a second, All In, the benefits of full commitment to building your marriage. I didn't want to go into commitment before I built some positivity into your marriage first and just kind of gave you some hope and made you feel like there was a future here and it was attainable. So I wanted to do the first two sessions of the workshop where we kind of look at marriage and the possibilities of it and kind of encourage ourselves in what we're trying to do before telling you need to commit. But actually, commitment is really essential. Maybe you're saying to yourself, well, we're married, that's a commitment. But there's an emotional commitment we make even within the context of a committed marriage. So what we want to do is we want to revisit that issue because the level of commitment you have to each other will profoundly impact your relationship and your ability to achieve emotional intimacy. So we're looking basically, we're all legally committed at this point, but we want you to get emotionally committed so that you can then build emotional closeness into your marriage, because this is kind of a cyclical thing. This is what often happens in marriage is people start having difficulties, and then the difficulties cause their commitment to weaken, especially in today's environment where divorce is constantly in front of married couples. There's a very contractual attitude toward marriage. You do your part, I do my part. As soon as you stop doing your part, the relationship is over and I'm getting rid of you because you're just a burden to me. This is kind of the zeitgeist we're living in right now culturally. And so it's very important that we kind of look at this through a biblical lens. And when we start having difficulties, does that mean that we say, oh, I guess this isn't working out? We just don't have that secret sauce that keeps our relationship doable, or we're just not what we thought we were, or we lost what we had. Is that what we do as soon as we start having difficulties? Let that commitment get weakened, because if we do, then there's going to be insecurity bred into the relationship. And what happens is when people are not secure in a relationship, it brings out their worst self. And the converse is true as well, that the more secure people are in a relationship, the better they respond to their partner. And so this is why commitment is so essential to building that marriage and developing those skills, is that the more commitment, the more security, and then the more flourishing. But what happens so often is there's this weakened commitment, this insecurity that comes in, and then behaviors that come out of that insecurity are very fear-based, controlling, blaming, and this kind of thing. And then the commitment weakens even more, and then there's even more difficulty, and it can be a very, very rapid downward spiral. On the other hand, if we have that bedrock of commitment, from that bedrock, we will be able to develop that sense of security. Then there will be a sense of trust. We'll kind of open up our hearts to each other, trust each other, and then ultimately be able to develop intimacy. By the way, when you see a little pencil there, that means it's going to be on a quiz question at the end of the presentation. I'll just read off some questions and you guys can put the answers in the chat. Okay, so another way of looking at this is that your marriage is going to flourish better when you have that strong, rich soil of commitment. We live in Orlando, Florida, and my husband and I are growers. We like to grow our own food. And we've been able to grow some stuff, but honestly, like the soil in in Orlando is terrible. It's terrible. And so there are a lot of things that just don't grow. We try to grow zucchini. I love zucchini, can't grow it. The soil's too poor. There's so many fungi, and you just have to basically buy your own soil. So I'm extremely frustrated with the soil in Florida. But good soil grows really healthy plants, and we want your soil of your relationship to be enriched, and commitment is a big part of that. This is a very interesting factoid, and that is that the fear mediating part of the brain, it's called the amygdala. It's a little part of your limbic system in your brain. It actually shuts down during sexual orgasm. So in other words, there's a inverse relationship between anxiety and orgasm. You really can't perform sexually if you're afraid. So how important is it that you feel safe with the person that you're with. I think especially women are impacted by that feeling of safety. I want to tell you about a friend of mine. He has given me permission to share this. His name is Matt Para. He actually ran for many years the Arise school, I believe. No, David ran the school, but he was part of Arise in Australia. And he was the evangelism director in Australia, even though he's American. And he moved over there to work with Arise. And now he's moving back to the States. So he's a pastor. And he and his wife, Charisse, were dating many years ago. And I had a conversation with Matt. I remember we were at a conference and we were sitting at a table in like a lobby, and he started just kind of shooting the breeze and sharing with me that he didn't know if he was going to move forward with his relationship with this girlfriend, Charisse. As you could see, she's a beautiful girl and he was a wonderful young man, and but he just wasn't sure. And I said, well, why aren't you sure, Matt? And he said, well, I'm not sure she's committed to me, so I'm not going to commit to her, in so many words. And I said to him, Matt, listen to yourself. What are you saying? You're saying that you want her to commit to you before you commit to her. And somebody has to take the first step. Somebody has to in a relationship like that. And I think he understood what I was saying, and he ended up proposing to her. I don't know if I can give myself total credit, but there they are as a married couple, and here they are with all their kids. They just had their fourth child, and look at those little children. Aren't they just so, so beautiful? And all that came because a man found it in his heart to commit to the woman of his dreams, and now they are a beautiful family. What a beautiful thing, huh? So one of the questions we might ask ourselves is, who commits, the man or the woman? Who makes that initial sacrifice and takes that initial risk? So I just want to comment on that. I don't think there's any dogmatic way of approaching this, but I do think that overall men tend to be better risk takers, and that women tend toward higher rejection sensitivity. So putting oneself out there and then being rejected, I think overall might be harder on a woman than a man. And so you could make a case, I don't want to dogmatize this again, but you could make a case for men actually being better positioned to take the risk. And I do think that there is something to a man really being humble and putting himself out for a woman, because think about it, in a marriage situation, he's bigger than she is. He's probably more powerful. And if she has children, she's going to be the children's primary caregiver, at least while the children are small. And in many ways, he has a power advantage, or at least potentially a power advantage over her. And so it's really important that he shows his humility in the process of courtship, in my view. And I don't mean to sound really outdated, but I do think some things are immutable in human nature. So if you're in a marriage already and you're wondering, well, should I just wait for my husband to fully commit emotionally, or should I commit? I would say this, that if one partner is fully sold out and committed in a marriage, there's a really good chance that marriage will flourish, even with just that one partner. But better yet, both partners fully committed to not just keeping the legal contract intact, but fully committed to loving each other the very best they can and to develop those skills we've been talking about. Both partners fully sold out to their relationship, to each other, can create that bedrock I was talking about a moment ago, and that relationship can flourish. So one of the things that happens to us sometimes, especially those that are newly married, is we kind of lose our first love. We can see that concept in the book of Revelation, where Jesus tells the church of Ephesus that she's lost her first love and she needs to regain it. So when we first fall in love, the euphoria of that experience literally shuts down the circuit from a part of our brain called the nucleus accumbens to the amygdala, the fear part of the brain. And this circuit processes negative information. This shutdown is to account for the blindness that we so often have to our partner's negative traits. It's a characteristic of a new love that you're just sort of blind to the flaws in your beloved. And to some degree, that's a sort of a trick your brain plays on you, for lack of better words, So the brain can remain in this in love state for a maximum of about 2 years before it becomes impossible to sustain neurologically. Here's some of the things that happen. In this pair bonding process, the judgment center of the brain literally dims. And again, there's that blindness to the flaws. And then this thing called mentalization decreases. Mentalization is my ability to see in another person that they have their own inner life and that I don't know what's going on inside of them. That ability to see them as a separate individual, well, that is decreased in the pair bonding process. And that is to account for the fact that the walls between people seem to just fall down when they're in that in love phase. There's also a flood of dopamine in the brain. That's the pleasure neurotransmitter. There's an increase of adrenaline. That's the, like excitement and activation hormone in our bodies. And it's, so you're really excited during that in love process. There's, interestingly enough, a reduction in serotonin, which is the neurotransmitter that maintains, an even mood. And so that reduction in serotonin is thought to account for the fact that, because when people have OCD, they have very low serotonin typically. They have serotonin issues. And so that reduction in serotonin is thought maybe to account for the fact that lovers tend to obsess over each other. But it's also like kind of an artificial state because your regular mood regulating neurotransmitters aren't working as hard, but dopamine is working over time. So that's what I mean when I say it's just almost an artificial condition. And then there's this amygdala, this fear shutdown. So there is a very sort of unnatural state of affairs going on in the pair bonding process. Notice the quiz alert here. And then there's that turnoff of the nucleus accumbens that I spoke about a minute ago. Again, that can only be sustained for about 2 years before that rush, that neurological cocktail is going to wear off. So the $1 million question is this: do we lose all romantic feelings? Is it that we get 2 years of romance and positive emotions toward each other and all those sexy feelings, and then they're gone and it's over? And the good news is no, you can still have romantic feelings in your relationship, but the order of it is going to change. So let me make one more point first, and then I'll go back to that. So here's the thing, is that a biblical approach to attraction, actually, it doesn't rule out attraction, but it expands the basis of it. So you love your partner, not just sexually, you're not just physically attracted to them, but you love their whole soul. And so that's going to sustain that in-love experience longer than it would if it was just purely physical attraction. But we're still going to have that moment where it feels like our car has run out of gas in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And where are we going to go now? Fortunately, God has built a battery into the human mechanism, the human marriage, that will sustain us past that point. So here's the good news, and that is that the feelings that led to commitment now follow commitment. Love is once the thing that stirred expression of love, but now expression stirs the love. Did you get that? Look at it again. Let me say it again. The feelings that led you to, now face it, we all fell in love, or we really liked our partner, or we had really positive feelings toward them, I hope. And by the way, don't fall prey to this idea that you should marry someone you're not attracted to, you don't like, for some kind of virtue reasons. Hopefully you all had good feelings toward each other, and that led you to say, wow, I think I could spend the rest of my life with this person. So those feelings led to the commitment. Now those feelings can follow the commitment. Love for your spouse once stirred you to express the love. Oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, I just think you're so smart. Oh, I love spending time with you. I love our conversations. That's expressing those emotions. But now you express, and that's going to sort of increase those feelings of love. So there's a little bit of a direction change here. You go from commitment following the feelings and the various neurological changes that take place, the decrease in serotonin, increase in OCD behaviors, the increase in dopamine. So you're going to have those feelings and commitment's going to follow. But now your commitment can lead and your feelings can follow. And the good news is your feelings can actually deepen. So what I was talking about a few moments ago, the fact that our basis for love is much broader than just physical attraction. There's actually the potential for those feelings that follow being even much more deep and profound and rich feelings that are possible without the commitment leading and without that Christian basis for our love one for another. Okay, so I want to read this statement from Adventist Home about this. She says it all so perfectly. She says, though difficulties, perplexities, and discouragements may arise, let neither husband nor wife harbor the thought that their union is a mistake or a disappointment. Don't harbor that thought. Determine to be all that it is possible to be to each other. And we're going to have limits. We're human, but determine to be all that you can be. And then this is probably the most important sentence in the entire passage. And it's just 4 words. Continue the early attentions. Look at that. Continue the early attentions. You once did things because you felt a certain way. Now you do those things and the feelings follow. But you continue the early attentions. Maybe you won't be impelled to tell your spouse you're beautiful the way you were when you were first courting, but you can still do it and mean it. In every way, encourage each other in fighting the battles of life. Study to advance the happiness of each other. Let there be mutual love, mutual forbearance. And by the way, when you study to advance something, you think hard about it. And a lot of the follow-through exercises we're going to give you are going to have to do with really coming to know your spouse better and having the kind of conversations that help you gain the knowledge you need to advance each other's happiness. Let there be mutual love, mutual forbearance. Then marriage, instead of being the end of love, will be, as it were, the very beginning of love. You see, it can get better instead of being like, oh, that 2-year dopamine rush is over and now it's just grueling effort from here on. No, your love can be deeper than it ever was. It can be the beginning of love, the warmth of true friendship. And what we're going to really focus on in the next couple of sessions is recovering our friendship. So the warmth of true friendship, the love that binds heart to heart, is a foretaste of the joys of heaven. Such a beautiful statement. So here's some takeaway points for you. If you want that committed love experience, here's some things that you need to watch. Number 1, do not cherish the idea that your relationship, your marriage was a mistake. Number 2, determine to be all you can be to each other. Continue those early attentions. Encourage each other. Study to advance the happiness of each other, and love and forbear. That means there's going to be a need for patience with the person's flaws. That's a normal part of marriage. It's a normal part of any relationship. So expect that and don't think some terrible thing has happened if your spouse isn't being their best self all the time. That's where patience and forbearance come in. Okay? Here are some of the things that the enemy whispers in your ear to try to convince you that your marriage has some kind of fatal flaw that will doom it to eternal unhappiness or divorce or whatever. So here's what the enemy whispers often after a fight, often after difficulties arise and your heart is broken and you feel hopeless. This is what the devil says. You're not really soulmates. You know, that soulmate concept is kind of a dangerous idea. People cultivate closeness. They aren't given it by some kind of divine fiat. So that soulmate idea is kind of like this idea that there's some supernatural force that comes in and binds your soul to another person apart from your choice. It's not really a biblical idea. I don't see it in scripture. I see the scripture telling us to cultivate that closeness and to bind heart to heart. Another thing the enemy whispers is you don't really love each other. Well, what's your definition of love? You may not be feeling very loving right now, but isn't love a choice? And can't you choose to love each other moving forward? Of course you can. And then another is your marriage was a mistake. Don't cherish the idea that your marriage was a mistake. Yes, there were some human imperfections that came to the fore in the process of your marriage developing, but that doesn't mean your marriage was a mistake. There are three basic systems at work in this pair bonding process. One is lust, mediated by hormones, and there's a lot of pleasure bound up in that. So that's the human response to the lust system. And God made us human beings with sex drives. That's not a bad thing. Lust kind of has a negative connotation in scripture. Maybe I should come up with a different word for this. But, ultimately, having a sex drive isn't a bad idea at all. It's a good thing. Romance is more of an emotional state, and that's going to be mediated by the neurotransmitter dopamine, and that's going to involve attraction to the other person, finding that person just so interesting and so kind of attractive to you. And then finally, the attachment system, which is mediated by the hormone oxytocin, that is going to bring you into that security with one another's love. Very, very important that all three of these are working in marriage, and they can. Another way of looking at marriage is you're going to go from passionate love, which is what happened in the beginning of your relationship, and that's going to mellow and strengthen into compassionate love. Notice the passion is still there. That core of passion is still there, but you've actually grown. You've grown it into compassionate love. I love this lyric from Carly Simon's song. It's the stuff that dreams are made of. It's, you guys are a lot younger than me, most of you, but I remember when this song was a big hit. And it's a kind of a timeless song, and it's a beautiful song. You should look it up. It's called The Stuff That Dreams Are Made Of. And she sang, it's the stuff that dreams are made of. It's the slow and steady fire. It's your heart and soul's desire. We all have a deep desire for that secure, compassionate love, that deep attachment to another human being. And if you never find that, you're depriving yourself of something very beautiful. And that's what marriage is designed to cultivate, is that deep, secure attachment. We each have a life timeline in our relational development. We start out with a close relationship with our parents, our primary caregivers, and then we move to sibling relationships, typically in the family life timeline. And then that's more of a horizontal relationship. Then the first relationship we have outside of the family of origin is friendship, and it's very similar to the sibling relationship. It's a horizontal relationship, but it's a chosen relationship. It's not a given relationship. We choose our friends, and we can lose our friends. You can kind of never lose your siblings, or your parents, even though you'd like to sometimes. But you choose your friends, and you learn skills of negotiation and conflict management in your friendships. And that's training for your relationship with your spouse, your partner, your life partner. And then you guys have children so often. I don't think all couples have to have biological children, but I think all couples should give out of the richness of their relationship with each other and mentor young people. So I think everybody should have either biological or spiritual children, or both. And then if you're lucky, you get grandchildren. I don't have any of those yet, but hopefully that'll happen. So my point here is that we go through this process and notice that friendship is the precursor to our life partnership with our spouse. A lot of recovering our love for each other with our spouse is rekindling and rediscovering that friendship. And that's what we're going to be moving into in our next session. We see this in the Song of Solomon. The bride says to the groom, "This is my beloved, and this is my friend." This partner that you have is really your best friend. It's the person with whom you share the most intimate aspects of life. And thank God for that relationship. And you can recover intimacy in your relationships. Okay, that's the presentation. I am going to back out of recording.